Welcome to Train Signal. You are watching the video for Lab 5, Managing Legacy Applications Using Group Policy. So far, we have used all the applications and deployed those applications using the IntelliMirror technology, and we noted that they always had the MSI files. Office 2000 had the MSI file data1.msi, and Office XP had the MSI file of ProPlus.msi. Now, what if the vendor of the application has not given you an MSI file? To use a better word, it's an older application, or to use a better word than that, it is a legacy application. In other words, you have those old applications sitting out there, or the newer vendors are still giving you the setup.exe files, and you would like to actually deploy them on your network. You are able to do so as well. You're going to do that by creating what is known as a ZAP file. But before we get into the ZAP file, let's once again talk about the differences between assign and the publish methods. If you recall, assign means that the application will be advertised on the desktop under the programs menu, like you saw in the applications that we did. So you would see a link, and then out there you would click on the application that got assigned. On the other hand, for publish, what the user has to do is the user has to go to the control panel, go to add remove programs, and in there they will find all the applications that are available for them to be able to actually install them over the network. In fact, when you use the assign method, it does both. It appears on the desktop over here as well as in the control panel, so that you can install it from there as well. The reason we never did it that way is because if it is available on the desktop, why do I need to go to the control panel to install the application? But so that you know, when you actually do assign, it puts it on the desktop and in the control panel as well, so that you can manage it from there too. Now, what we need to do is create what is known as a ZAP file, so that we can actually deploy these legacy applications to our network. The steps will be very similar. We just have to make a few modifications on the way. So to begin with, what is a ZAP file and why it is created? The reason we are creating a ZAP file is simply because we do not have an MSI file to actually do the installation. So we're going to create a ZAP file. A ZAP file is simply a text file with the following lines of code over here. But before we do that, let's go through this. So I'm creating an MSI file simply because I do not have, I'm creating a ZAP file because I do not have an MSI file. The other thing is that I cannot use the assign method. In fact, if you remember, that is one of the reasons why the publish method exists. If I do not have an MSI, I cannot use the assign method. I have to publish the application, and then it will appear on the control panel. Now, also, publish is available to users only. I cannot manage it through the computer configuration. So what I'm trying to say over here is that when you actually edit the GPO, you can either go to computer configuration or to the user configuration. Assign is available both under computer configuration as well as under user configuration, whereas publish is available to users only because somebody has to physically go to the control panel and then double click on the application to actually get it installed. The computer cannot do that on its own. And last but not the least, it will be available in the control panel like we've talked about. So to begin with, what you need to do is create a ZAP file. Now here's the code for the ZAP file that you will create. ZAP file is simply a text file with the extension .zap to it, and you need to type the following lines. The first line in square bracket will be the word application. The second line will be the friendly name equal to, and then whatever comes after the equal to sign is the variable. Depending on what you're trying to install, you will type the following lines of code. In our case, what we will do is we will install a popular application, WinZip, which does not have an MSI file, using a ZAP file, and it will be published to the control panel. So this is the line of code that is for the lab that I'm going to perform soon. But over here, the purpose is to actually explain to you the command, and I'm going to type this command with you live so that you can see the command, and I'm going to explain to you as I build it up. But there are three different things over here. To begin with, you need to create a ZAP file, and it should have the word application in the square bracket as the first line of that file. The second thing is, on the left hand side of this, but on each of these file names, there is a keyword, friendly name equal to, setup command equal to, and so forth. So this is a keyword. They must be typed exactly the way it is listed out here. After the equal to sign, you will type in those values, and these values are variables. They control the application that you're trying to install, and these will change depending on the application. So let's get started with creating these ZAP files, and as I type the ZAP files, I'll explain these commands to you. So I'm going to minimize this, and as usual, we will connect to our DC1. And I've done some homework already over here. So let's see what I've done so far. just like with any other deployment method, you need to create an SDP or a software deployment point. And I've created a folder called WinZip. And in that folder, I've downloaded the application winzip90.exe from WinZip's website so that we can start installing this one. Now, if you noticed over here, I did not share it yet. So let's do that as one of the steps that is required, sharing. And then I'm going to share this folder. So it's available to us as a share. There we go. Now, in this particular folder, what I will do is create a new text file. So I'm going to click on File, New. Okay, and then over here, I'm going to give it the word zip.zap just to make it catchy. All right, it's asking me that, well, if you're typing a file name like this, are you sure you want to change it because it did not put the extension .txt to it, so it wants me to know whether it's okay, and that's fine. In fact, you do not want it as zip.zap.txt. Please make a note of that. You know how when you save a file, it automatically puts the extension of that application to that file, and because I opened this up in Notepad, I should not put zip.zap.txt. The extension should be .zap. In fact, if you notice that after I type the extension zap, it changed the logo for me. So I'm going to double click on this to actually edit it in Notepad, and the first line of our code will be in square bracket the word application. There we go. So that's in the right bracket over here. That's the first word. The second keyword is friendly name equals, this is whatever I type over here is exactly what will appear in the control panel. So this will be the label that you are assigning the application. Make sure it describes exactly which application the user will be installing. In our case, we will type it as WinZip 9.0. So once again, this will be the label that will appear in the control panel, and the users will see the following words, WinZip 9.0. So make sure you describe the application well over here. All right, the next command is perhaps the most important command of this file, setup command equals. Now I need to give it the UNC name of this particular file. So it will be 2 slashes, the name of the domain controller, which is DC1. Or this would be, it doesn't have to be the domain controller. This is the UNC name of the share on which the SDP resides. And then the shared name is WinZip slash. Now over here, I need to give it the name of the file that will actually install this application. So here's a file, winzip90.exe. Please be very careful with this. If you make a mistake in this file name, the zap file will not work. Okay, because a lot of applications have different file names. For example, to give you an example off the top of my head, Adobe Acrobat Reader version 5.5 is ARR505ENU.exe. So you have to type that, not setup.exe or any other file name. All right, so we need to type over here winzip90.exe. So going back to my text file over here, winzip90.exe. I'll double check that, winzip90.exe, just to make sure that's exactly the name of the file, winzip90.exe. Great. Okay. Let's minimize this and go back to our text document. So this command is basically telling the zap file that run the following code once the installation starts. So that was the UNC name, 2 slashes, the name of the computer, the share, and in that share the file to execute. So that was the setup command. The next one is display version equals, and this is the version number 9.0. Technically it has no significance. In other words, I can type 7.0 and it will have no effect on this. However, this keyword is required and is part of the zap file installation. So you must type that name, even though technically it may not be significant. The last code is publisher equals, and then again over here it doesn't matter, but let's give credit to the company that actually created this application. So I'm ready with my zap file. Again, there should be 4 lines of code and then 1 5, so I'm okay. Alrighty, so let's save this, and it got saved as zip.zap. That's important, and I'm going to close this notepad and go back over here. So in my SDP there should be actually 2 files, winzip90.exe and zip.zap. Now again, in this particular application, that happens to be just 1 file that will install the application. In fact, this file unzips it and then installs the application. You may have some other application that has a bunch of files, just like Office XP was, And so that's okay too. Just copy the contents of the folder over here and name the executable in the zap file. So having done that, I'm going to close this. And now we are ready to deploy this application. So let's go to Active Directory users and computers. And what we will do is we will go to the same place and create a new group policy object over here. And I'm going to, remember we had taken care of this by uninstalling it, and I'm going to delete it just so that I have a clean environment over here. Okay, so I've just deleted the Office XP policy. Now we are ready to create a new policy. So I'm going to say new, and then over here type WinZip. Okay, so that's the name of a policy, WinZip app. Now let's edit it. Now, just to make a few points clear over here, if you remember, I can only I can only publish, not assign. And I can publish only to the user configuration and not to the computer configuration. Let me make a mistake on purpose over here. So I'm going to go under computer configuration. Let's see if I can actually deploy this to the computer configuration. Software installation, and follow the same steps that we did before. I will navigate to the DC1, and in there find the share WinZip. And it's looking for MSI, so let's change it to ZAP. But I can't. And the reason for that is to do an assignment on the computer configuration, I require a ZAP file. There is no choice. So as you can see over here, I was unable to actually deploy this application to the computer configuration. You have to do it under the user configuration. So let's do that. This time, I'm going to make one more mistake, or rather show you that it cannot be done in a certain manner. So when I go to DC1, I will go to WinZip, and now again MSI is not available. That's fine. I'm sorry, MSI is available, but you do not have an MSI file. That's fine. If I click on this, I'm able to pick up my ZAP file, and here's my ZAP file. And if you remember, if you're using a ZAP file, you can only publish, not assign. So let's try that. I'm going to click on the open button, and see this assigned was grayed out and published is available. Now a little pause over here. If you are not looking at this box when you are installing or deploying this application, in fact another message box comes up and says that there is some error, well, there is an error, and chances are the error is in the text file or the ZAP file that you just created. It is a good time time at that point to actually stop what you're doing as far as the group policy goes, go back to the ZAP file, spend time on it, and make sure that the code is typed up correctly. All right. But typically you should be able to see this particular screen that basically says that your code was good and it is ready to actually publish this application for you. So let's do that. I'm going to click on the OK button over here, and the application seems to have successfully been published. Close over here, and then close over here as well. Okay, this time what I'm going to do is create a batch file for the ZAP file that we were talking about. So on the desktop on DC1, I'm going to create a new text document, and let's call it refresh.bat. You want to change the extension? Sure. And now I'm going to right click on it and edit it, and over here I'm going to type two commands: secedit, refresh policy, user underscore policy, and then I'll simply copy and paste this, changing the user to machine underscore policy. So the first line will refresh all the user configurations under the group policy object, and the second one will refresh all the computer configuration in the group policy. So let's save this file. So from now on, rather than type this command, I'm going to simply double click on this batch file, and our policies will get refreshed. So that's a little lesson in batch files for you. Alrighty, so let's minimize this, and let's double click on client one and see if we are able to actually get this particular application published in the control panel. So let's try that. Let's log on to client one now, and I'm going to log in as J. Smith. Okay, let's observe what happens next. Loading your personal settings, applying your, there we go. Quickly it came up, applying software installation settings, so I think we are in luck. This time I did not have to finally reboot. Alrighty, before we go further, let's check one thing out. Under the programs menu, don't expect to find WinZip application over here or see any shortcuts on a desktop as far as the application being installed. Remember, for the publish method, we need to go to control panel, and then in control panel we need to go to add remove programs, and in there we need to click on the left hand side over here, you need to click on add new programs, and once I click that, it should show me the currently available applications on a network, and there we go. Add programs from your network, and it shows me that WinZip 90 is available. If you recall, that's exactly what we typed in a ZAP file. Whatever you had I typed in the ZAP file WinZip 90 by Advanced Computing, that's exactly the name that will appear over here as well. Okay, and then click on the add button, and then the standard installation of WinZip will start. You click on the setup button, and then you finish the installation. So I'm going to click on setup over here, let it go, and we will minimize the screen. We'll minimize the screen over here, and then go back to our talking points over here. So going back, I only need to create a ZAP file only if the MSI is not available. And a ZAP file is called the Zero Administration Package file. It's simply a text file with the following lines of code. And this line of code is basically telling WinZip, as this is telling GPO exactly how to install the application WinZip. Now, this is not a perfect solution. Sometimes you will see an error message as far as the ability of the user to install the application on that particular computer, and that's okay. You have to be able to find out exactly what permissions are needed for that application, and then give those permissions to those user accounts if you want to use it in that manner. Okay, whereas the MSI has complete information about the security settings. In other words, what MSI does is it automatically elevates the user security settings so that they are able to install the application. In the ZAP file, you may have to take care of that yourself, depending again on how the application was written. WinZip, you will notice that it will not install it in a default location, but if you change the location, it will go through automatically. So there is some slight adjustment that needs to be made from application to application, but for most part, this code works fine. So what we've done is the following. So far, we created a ZAP file and then used that ZAP file to publish the application WinZip to our group policy and into our domain benandbrady.com. Finally, we need to talk about what is known as application categories. Now, this becomes important because over a period of time, you will have so many of these applications deployed on your domain that sometimes users may not be able to find the application very easily. Going back a little bit, when you assigned Office XP and Office 2000, like I said, they also publish it in the control panel. We never go there to use it, but it's published out there. Okay, and when you use a ZAP file to publish the application, it's always published in the control panel. So over a period of time, you'll have several of those applications. Let's say you have like 25, 30 different applications, and all those applications will appear as a list in the control panel. And the users may not be able to find those applications very easily. So all you're trying to do is create what is known as application categories, simply creating different categories so that the user clicks on a certain category such as programming and then finds all the programming applications out there, clicks on a category called antivirus and finds the antivirus files and the updates out there, and so forth. Okay, so you can create those categories and put the right application in the right category, just so that you can organize the control panel a little bit better. So let me show you exactly how to do that. We're going to minimize this and then go back to our domain controller, which is DC1. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is disconnect this client, and then going back over here to the control panel. Here we go. See this? All categories it shows all categories and nothing is available out here. Once I create the categories, different items will be available over here, such as programming tools and so forth. Once you select programming, you'll be able to see all the applications under that category over here. So it just makes it a little bit easier to find the applications to you. So I'm going to close this, and let's disconnect the user, so that once the policy is in effect, we can log in one more time as Jill Smith and be able to get the settings for that user. So I'm going to let this disconnect in the background. In the meantime, we will go to DC1, and then over here we will go back to users and computers, and now I'm going to show you how to create what are known as application categories. The first thing that you need to understand about the application category is that I can go to any of these containers and create the application category out there. In other words, before, remember, I used to be very specific that if you're trying to create a group policy and try to link it to the North Carolina OU, you must click over here and then proceed ahead. Now I'm going to say it loosely that go anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to go to benbrady.com, right click, properties, because the application category that I create in any of these policies will actually be in effect for the entire domain. So it doesn't matter where I go. So I'm going to go to group policy over here and click on the edit button. Okay. Now over here under software settings, what I'm going to do is right click on this, rather right click on software installation, and then go to properties, and then come to the tab that says categories. So I can create the categories anywhere. I just chose the default domain policy to be able to create the categories in. To create a new category, you simply click on the add button, and then let's create the first category called accounting. So all the accounting packages will be over here. Create a second one called tools, and then the third category called programming. And then it would be our task to put the right application in the right category. So having done that, I'm going to click on apply, okay. Now actually I'm going to exit out of this group policy, and to make my point clear, what I'll do is I'll go to California OU over here, right click, properties, go to the group policy object over here, and then click on edit in the policy that we had. And just to show you that I can do it from anywhere, I'll go to properties, go to categories, and look at this. Even though I created the category in the default domain policy, they are available in the other policies for me. So now it's time to use these categories. We simply just created it. Now it's time to use it. To use these categories, we need to select on this, right click. In other words, I'm selecting the package that I've deployed, right click, go to properties. Several tabs come up, and the first tab over here is the general tab that gives me the information as to what is being deployed. The second tab is a deployment tab. It shows me the type of deployment. In other words, if I had for Office XP and I had assigned it, if I would like to change it to publish, I do not have to recreate the group policy object. I can simply switch back and forth. Of course, in this case, I cannot switch simply because ZAP requires that I can only publish it. Auto install this application by file extension activation. If you recall, this is also known as file invocation. If I double click on a file whose extension belongs to an application that I can install as part of the group policy, it will be installed for me. So for example, if somebody gives me a PowerPoint slide on a CD-ROM, and I double click on the file, for example slides.ppt, which is the extension for PowerPoint, if PowerPoint was not installed in my computer, it will be installed for me. If you do not want that to happen, simply click on this check button and it will not do so. Uninstall this application when it falls out of scope of management. This one is important. This is how this works. I'm going to just reposition this over here a little bit. Actually, I can. I'm going to actually take a little bow out of over here and then come back to it. Let's say that here California has the WinZip policy assigned to it, all right? And Jill Smith is a user in the California OU. Let's say that Jill Smith was transferred to North Carolina. So when she gets over here, what do you want the policy to do? Do you want the policy to actually uninstall the application that was being used over here while she was under the California OU and that GPU is not being deployed over here? Or do you want her to continue using the application even though she transferred? So that's your choice. And the way you control that is, I'm going back to my policy. By clicking on this checkbox that says uninstall this application when it falls out of scope of management. In other words, if the user were to go from one OU to another, and if that new OU does not have that application deployed, forcibly uninstall it. Again, this works for MSI only. In ZAP, you cannot forcibly uninstall. Hence, it is grayed out. Do not display this package in the Add Remove Programs and Control panel. Again, if you are using the assign method, as I said, assign will put it both on the desktop as well as in the control panel, and check this box and it won't actually show up over there. Okay. Going on to the next one, categories. So here we go. What category would you like to put the package WinZip in? So I'm going to choose tools and select next. In fact, you can select more than one also. For example, tools fits in WinZip. If WinZip fits under tools and a different category such as miscellaneous, you could have selected more than one categories as well. Okay, so it gives you complete command as to how you would like to organize your applications. So I'm going to click on the OK button over here, get out, and now let's log off. Okay, close all these, and now I can refresh my policy simply by double clicking on this. okay, and the policy is refreshed. Now it's time to try it out one more time. So what I'm going to do is log into client 1, and we're going to log in as JSmith. Okay, now let's go to our control panel and see if the categories do exist. So let's get on the control panel here, add remove programs, and this time when I click on add new programs, all categories, and there we go. Alright, so I'm going to select a category, accounting. Since we did not put WinZip in accounting, it was unavailable. However, it is available under tools. And then a third category was programming, it is not there. Of course, there's one catch-all category called all categories, and everything is available in that particular link. So this should help you organize all your applications much better using Active Directory, so that if you have a bunch of applications that need to be deployed, users can easily find it. After all, that was the object of all these labs that we've been performing. Two major objectives. The first objective was so that you can manage it better. You do not want to spend all your time going around each computer trying to install, uninstall, and fix applications. In fact, one of the things that the MSI does also is that if one of the key files of the application is either corrupted or deleted by mistake, when the user next time tries to use that particular application, it will automatically contact the SDP, the software deployment point, and then fix the files. It is self-repairing, it will fix the files, and the application will be up and running. In fact, you will never ever get a call saying that, you know, it's giving me a message that the following DLL is missing. Not with the MSI technology. And if you've deployed it correctly, it should automatically go there and fix itself up. Those of you are familiar with Office 2003, now when you install Office 2003, it gives you the option of actually leaving the source code on your local computer for the same reason, so that in case there's a file that is corrupted, it will not ask you to insert a CD-ROM. You should be able to go and find the source files and fix those files for you automatically. So the first objective of using all these technologies was so that your life is a little bit easier and you're spending more time not managing major items in the network, not doing mundane tasks. And the second thing is to make it easier for the users to get exactly what they need to perform the activities at work. All right, so if they need certain applications, they should be available to them no matter which computer they use. So that should wrap up our discussion on group policy and application deployment. To summarize, if you have a ZAP file, if you have an MSI file, try to use the assign method as much as possible, because it's easy for the users to find the application. And when you use the assign method, you can either assign it to the computer, so that once the computer starts, automatically the application will be installed on that computer regardless of who the user is, or you can assign it to the user. In other words, the application will follow the user. If the user goes to a certain desktop and the application is not installed on that computer, the application will get installed simply because the user logged onto that machine. If you do not have the MSI file, meaning that you have a legacy application, well, then you can create a ZAP file and then install the application in that manner. The only method that is available over here is a publish method, which means that you have to go to the control panel and then install the application from there. Last but not the least, if you have several applications installed, you can create application categories. This concludes this video. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in a different video in Active Directory.